Under the dim glow of a luxurious New York clinic, Emma Larson stood frozen, her trembling hands clutching the medical forms tightly. Her heart pounded wildly, as if it might burst from her chest. She never imagined she'd find herself here, facing her deepest fears. But what lies behind the perfect smile of Dr. Ethan Caldwell, a charismatic single-dad millionaire? A secret that could change everything, or a fated love waiting to unfold? Their dramatic, romantic journey will sweep you through mysteries, heart-wrenching moments, and a truth that shakes the world to its core. Will Emma dare to open her heart to a man she can't resist? Follow our channel now to dive into this emotional love story and join us in a world where love and secrets intertwine. Emma Larson stood before the worn bookshelves of her small, tucked-away bookstore in a quiet corner of New York. Her fingers brushed lightly over the book covers, but her mind was elsewhere. She was consumed by thoughts of the appointment she had that afternoon, the one she'd postponed for months, a persistent pain, endless nights of online searches, and finally, she could no longer avoid it. The Caldwell Women's Health Clinic, the best in the city, was her only option. Yet the mere thought of stepping inside made her heart pound as if it might burst. Emma, a shy girl who lived quietly in a world of books and modest dreams, had never been good at facing things that unsettled her. She glanced at her watch, sighed, and forced herself to leave the bookstore. New York's streets buzzed with life. The blare of car horns and the rush of hurried crowds made her feel even smaller. She clutched her canvas bag tightly and stepped into the gleaming glass building of the clinic. Inside, the air was cool, faintly scented with antiseptic. She gripped the medical forms, her trembling fingers filling in her name, date of birth, and medical history. Each question felt like a reminder that she was here, in a place she dreaded. She wiped her hands on her jeans, trying to breathe evenly. "It's just an appointment, Emma," she told herself. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. A nurse called her name. Emma flinched, her heart racing faster. She stood, her legs heavy as lead, and followed the nurse down a long hallway. The clinic doors were closed, the space so pristine it felt almost sterile. The nurse led her to a small, tidy room with framed certificates on the walls and a polished wooden desk. Emma sat down, her back rigid as a ruler, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She avoided looking at the daunting examination chair in the corner. With each passing second, she felt the air being sucked out of the room. Then the door opened. The man who entered was unlike any doctor Emma had ever pictured. Dr. Ethan Caldwell was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair slightly tousled in a natural way. His deep blue eyes radiated effortless confidence, and his gentle smile seemed to brighten the room. He wore a white coat, yet he looked as if he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. As a single-dad millionaire, Ethan was not only the city's finest doctor, but also the owner of the clinic chain bearing his name. But Emma didn't know that. All she saw was a man too perfect, too distant, and it sent a wave of panic through her. "Miss Larson?" His voice was warm, professional, yet laced with a tenderness that startled her. Emma nodded, her cheeks burning. She wanted to say something, but her mouth was dry. Ethan sat across from her, flipping through her file, his eyes scanning the pages. "I see this is your first gynecological visit," he said softly. "Don't worry, we'll take it slow. How are you feeling?" Emma swallowed hard, searching for words. "I'm fine," she stammered, though she clearly wasn't. Ethan smiled, a smile that made her heart skip a beat. He noticed her tension, the way she avoided his gaze, the way she gripped her hands as if she wanted to vanish. There was something about her shyness, her fragility, that made him want to tread carefully. As a single-dad millionaire, Ethan had met countless people, but Emma was different. She didn't try to impress, didn't flaunt herself, and that piqued his curiosity. The visit passed quickly. Ethan's gentle professionalism easing some of Emma's fears. When she left the clinic, her legs still trembled, but something inside her had shifted. She couldn't shake the memory of his eyes, the way he said her name, as if she were the only person in the room. But she told herself it was an illusion. A man like Ethan Caldwell, a millionaire dad with the world at his fingertips, would never notice an ordinary girl like her. That evening, Emma sat in her small apartment, the faint glow of a yellow lamp illuminating the book she was reading. Her best friend, Lily, stopped by, carrying a coffee and a mischievous smile. "Hey, tell me about the appointment," Lily said, curling up on the sofa. Emma sighed, recounting the day, trying to keep her tone casual, but when she mentioned Ethan, Lily raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Caldwell? Oh my gosh, do you know who he is?" Emma frowned. "My doctor?" Lily burst out laughing. "Not just that. He's a single dad millionaire, Emma. He owns that whole clinic chain, is insanely rich and looks like a Hollywood star. But—" Lily's voice dropped, tinged with mystery. "They say he has a strange past. No one knows the details, but there are rumors of an old scandal. You should be careful." Emma furrowed her brow, her heart stirring. A scandal? A past? She didn't want to believe it, but Lily's words were like a stone dropped into a still lake. She tried to push the thought away, but deep down, she knew she'd been drawn into something bigger than herself. As she closed her eyes that night, Ethan's image lingered, and she wondered if he was truly the man she thought he was, or if a secret lay hidden behind that smile. Unbeknownst to her, at that very moment, in another corner of the city, Ethan was thinking of her too. In his luxurious penthouse, he sat at his desk, his gaze drifting to New York's skyline. As a millionaire dad, he'd mastered hiding his emotions, but something about Emma made him restless. And as he closed his eyes, a shadow from his past flickered through his mind, a reminder that love always came with risks. Emma stood behind the counter of her small bookstore, the warm golden glow of the lamps casting soft light on the weathered bookshelves. Outside, New York's streets thrummed with life, but inside, the space was hushed, a private world of its own. She rearranged a few books, trying to push Dr. Ethan Caldwell from her mind. A week had passed since her appointment at the clinic, yet his piercing blue eyes and gentle smile still haunted her. As a single dad millionaire, he belonged to a world she could never touch. She told herself the flutter in her heart was fleeting, that a man like him would never cross her path again. But fate had other plans. The bookstore's bell jingled, and when Emma looked up, her heart skipped a beat. Ethan stepped inside, not in his doctor's coat, but in a rolled-up shirt, relaxed yet radiating the refined charm of a millionaire dad. Beside him was a little girl, her brown curls bouncing, her wide eyes sparkling. "This is Mia, my daughter," Ethan said, his voice warm and deep. Mia, just 5 years old, gazed at Emma with a radiant smile, as if they'd known each other forever. Emma smiled, hiding her unease. "Hi, Mia. Do you like books?" The girl nodded eagerly, darting to the children's section. Ethan watched his daughter, his eyes tender but tinged with a quiet sadness. "She loves books, just like her mother used to," he said, his voice softening. Emma's brow furrowed, curiosity stirring, but she didn't dare press further. She guided Mia to the children's corner, picking out a colorful comic book. Mia clutched it, her smile beaming, and Emma felt an unfamiliar warmth bloom in her chest. Ethan stood nearby, watching Emma's patient way with Mia. As a single dad millionaire, he was used to curious glances and whispers about his wealth and status. But Emma was different. She was simple, sincere, and the way she made Mia laugh stirred something in him he'd long buried. "You're good with kids," he said, his gaze locked on her. Emma blushed, shaking her head. "I just like making people happy." Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Ethan shared stories of weekends taking Mia to the park, of her love for painting with watercolors. Emma spoke of her passion for old books, of quiet evenings reading in her small apartment. Something about Ethan made her feel safe, as if she could be herself without pretense. But whenever she asked about him, about the life of a millionaire dad, he deftly changed the subject. "I'm not as interesting as you think," he said with a half-smile. Emma sensed an invisible wall he'd built, and it left her both curious and uneasy. A few days later, Emma sipped coffee in a cozy cafe near the bookstore, where the soft glow of hanging lights warmed the air. She was lost in a book when the door opened. Ethan appeared, alone this time. He approached her table, his familiar smile quickening her pulse. "Mind if I join you, or will you chase away a loyal customer?" he teased. Emma laughed, her cheeks flushing, and gestured for him to sit. They talked about everything: favorite books, unfulfilled dreams. Ethan recounted his journey to becoming a doctor, the sleepless nights building his clinic empire. As a single-dad millionaire, he'd done it all for Mia, but when he mentioned her mother, his eyes darkened. "She's no longer in our lives," he said curtly, his tone cold. Emma felt the pain behind his words but didn't push. Instead, she shared stories of her childhood, of tough days growing up in a modest family on New York's outskirts. Ethan listened, his eyes never leaving her, as if memorizing every detail. "Emma," he said suddenly, his voice deeper, "do you ever feel like you don't belong anywhere?" She froze, stunned that a man like him, a millionaire dad with the world at his feet, could feel that way. She nodded, her voice soft. "Almost always." Ethan smiled, but it carried a trace of sadness. "So did I, until I met you and Mia at the bookstore." His words sent her heart racing. She wanted to ask more, to understand why a man like him would say such things, but before she could, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression tightening. "I have to go," he said, standing. "But I'll be back, Emma. I promise." He left, leaving her with a mix of warmth and unease. His promise echoed in her mind, but so did an unspoken question. What was he hiding? In the days that followed, Ethan became a regular presence. He stopped by the bookstore, sometimes with Mia, sometimes alone, always finding ways to linger in conversation with Emma. Mia grew attached, calling her Miss Emma, with a voice full of affection. One afternoon, as Mia gave Emma a drawing, she whispered, "I want you to stay with Daddy and me forever." Emma smiled, but her heart tightened. She glanced at Ethan nearby, his eyes gentle, yet pensive. As a single-dad millionaire, he seemed to carry the weight of the world, and something in his gaze made her wonder if she could ever step into his life. One evening, Emma locked up the bookstore late, her thoughts still swirling around Ethan. She stepped onto New York's chilly streets, the air crisp around her. Passing a narrow alley, she heard a familiar voice. Ethan stood there, speaking to a stranger, his tone tense. "Don't dig into my past," he said, his voice laced with regret. The man smirked and slipped into the shadows. Ethan turned, catching Emma's gaze. For a fleeting moment, fear flashed in his eyes, but he quickly masked it. "Emma!" he called, stepping closer. "You shouldn't be here." She wanted to demand answers, to know what he was hiding, but his eyes, pleading yet resolute, silenced her. He took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Trust me," he whispered. Emma nodded, though doubt gnawed at her heart. As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd brushed against the edge of a deeper secret, one that could change everything between her and the man she was slowly falling for. Emma Larson stepped out of her small bookstore, her canvas bag slung over her shoulder, her eyes still lingering on the image of Ethan Caldwell. Over the past weeks, he had become an undeniable part of her life, from their heartfelt talks in cozy cafes to the tender moments shared with his daughter Mia. But today, her heart felt heavy. Ethan, a single dad millionaire, had invited her to his lavish penthouse in the heart of New York, where he lived with Mia. "Just dinner," his message read. But Emma knew it was more than that. She took a deep breath, merging into the bustling city crowd, trying to quell the growing unease within her. Ethan's penthouse was a world apart, with gleaming hardwood floors, expansive glass windows showcasing New York's twinkling skyline, and exquisite furniture that radiated the opulence of a millionaire dad. Mia greeted her with a tight hug, clutching a colorful drawing of a house. "Miss Emma, this is for you," the girl chirped, her smile radiant. Emma knelt down, embracing Mia, her heart warmed by the child's innocence. Ethan stood nearby, his gaze soft but tinged with tension, as if he were concealing something. Dinner passed with Mia's laughter and light conversation. Ethan spoke of his journey to becoming a doctor, of the early days building his renowned clinic chain. As a single dad millionaire, he'd done it all for Mia, but when Emma asked about her mother, he offered only a faint smile. "It's a long story," he said, his eyes dodging hers. Emma nodded, but a seed of doubt took root in her heart. She wanted to trust him, but his vagueness stirred her unease. After dinner, Ethan took Mia to bed, leaving Emma in the vast living room. Her eyes wandered over the bookshelves and framed photos on the wall. A small picture stopped her cold. A younger Ethan, standing beside a blonde woman, both beaming with joy. Her heart clenched. Who was she? Before she could dwell on it, the doorbell rang, shattering her thoughts. Ethan returned and opened the door to a stranger. The man wore a rumpled suit, his sharp eyes glinting, a small notebook in hand. "Dr. Caldwell," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Paul Grayson, reporter. We need to talk about your past." Emma, hidden behind a bookshelf, held her breath. A reporter? His past? The air grew thick, as if a secret was about to unravel. Ethan's jaw tightened, his voice icy. "I have nothing to say to you." But Paul pressed on, undeterred. "Really? The public would love to hear about a single dad millionaire like you. That old financial scandal, the money laundering allegations, and the woman who left you. It's all worth digging up, isn't it?" Emma's blood ran cold. Money laundering? A scandal? She looked at Ethan, waiting for him to deny it, but he stood silent, his eyes darkening, his lips pressed into a thin line. Paul continued, his tone triumphant. "Readers eat up stories about a millionaire dad with dark secrets. You can't hide forever." Ethan stepped forward, his voice cutting. "Get out. Now." Paul shrugged, flashing a sly grin, and left, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Emma remained frozen, her hands trembling, her mind reeling. Paul's words stabbed at her trust like a knife. She wanted to believe in Ethan, but his silence was the most painful answer of all. Ethan turned, catching her gaze. For a fleeting moment, fear flickered in his eyes, but he quickly masked it. "Emma," he said, stepping closer. "You heard, didn't you?" She nodded, her voice choked. "Is it true, Ethan? Were you involved in those things?" Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, his eyes averted. "It's the past, Emma. A difficult time. But I'm not the man he described." His explanation was too vague, like a breeze that couldn't calm the storm raging in Emma's heart. She thought of the times he'd dodged her questions, of the photo she'd just seen. Was she just a distraction, a way for him to escape his past? "I don't know how to trust you," she said, tears brimming. Ethan reached out, as if to hold her back, but she stepped away. "Emma, please trust me," he pleaded, his voice raw. But she couldn't. Not now. She left the penthouse, her heart shattered. New York's streets felt colder, the neon lights mocking her pain. She slipped into her bookstore, locked the door, and sank among the familiar shelves. Paul's words echoed in her mind. Scandal, money laundering, the woman. She thought of Mia, of Ethan's smile, and wondered if it was all a facade, the mask of a millionaire dad hiding too many secrets. She wanted to run, to forget him, but deep down, she knew she couldn't. The next day, Emma went to Ethan's clinic to retrieve her forgotten jacket. The atmosphere was tense, staff whispering among themselves, their glances brushing past her as if she didn't belong. She entered Ethan's office, finding him behind his desk, his eyes weary. "Emma," he said, standing, "I'm glad you came." But she cut him off. "I need the truth, Ethan," she said, her voice firm. "If you can't give it to me, I can't stay." Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with pain. "There are things I can't share, not because I want to hide, but because I'm protecting Mia." His words shook her, but doubt clung tightly. As a single dad millionaire, he had so much to lose, and she feared she was just a small piece in his complex world. "Protecting Mia? Or protecting yourself?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer, his gaze locked on hers. "I never meant to hurt you, Emma, but my past, it's not simple." She shook her head, tears streaming down. "I can't love someone I don't understand, Ethan." She turned away, leaving him alone in the cold room. As she stepped onto New York's streets, she felt as if she'd lost a piece of her heart. Yet deep within, she heard a whisper, a secret waiting to be unveiled, and she wondered if she'd ever dare to face it. Rain poured down on New York streets, icy droplets seeping through Emma Larson's coat, sending shivers through her body. She hurried along, her flimsy umbrella no match for the deluge, her mind a tangled mess after days of trying to erase Ethan Caldwell from her heart. As a single dad millionaire, he had stirred feelings she couldn't ignore, but the words of reporter Paul Grayson about financial scandals and Ethan's shadowy past had planted seeds of doubt. She longed to trust Ethan's earnest gaze, to cling to the warm moments with him and Mia, but the vague truths he left behind made her feel lost in a labyrinth with no way out. Emma paused before her bookstore, the faint golden glow from within beckoning like a sanctuary. She stepped inside, locked the door, and sought solace among the familiar shelves. But her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. A message from Ethan. "Emma, I need to see you. Please, just once." She stared at the screen, her fingers hesitating. She wanted to ignore it, to keep her distance, but the urgency in his words, even through text, tugged at her. She replied curtly, "The cafe, 1 hour." The small cafe, once filled with their shared stories and smiles, now felt heavy with tension. Emma sat in their usual corner, her hands gripping a cold coffee cup. Ethan entered, his dark hair damp, his eyes weary but lighting up when he saw her. As a millionaire dad, he always exuded confidence, but today he looked like a man wrestling with himself. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice hoarse. Emma kept her expression guarded, though her heart raced. "Talk, Ethan. I don't have much time." Before Ethan could speak, the cafe door swung open. A woman strode in, her blonde hair gleaming, her posture regal, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She wore an expensive coat, her high heels clicking on the wooden floor. The air grew stifling as she approached their table. "Ethan," she said, her voice sweet but laced with mockery. "You still love these little places, don't you?" Ethan stiffened, his eyes darkening. "Laura," he said, his voice taut. Emma held her breath, her mind reeling. Laura? The woman from the photo in the penthouse? Mia's mother? She looked at Ethan, waiting for an explanation, but he only clenched his fists under the table. Laura smiled, her gaze shifting to Emma. "And you must be Emma, right? Ethan didn't tell you about me, did he?" Her words cut like a blade, slicing into Emma's heart. She turned to Ethan, her eyes brimming with pain. "Who is she, Ethan? Tell me." Laura cut in, her voice icy. "I'm Laura Bennett, Mia's mother, and the one Ethan tried to erase from his life." Emma's heart seemed to stop. She looked at Ethan, hoping he'd deny it, but he only lowered his head, his eyes filled with anguish. "Emma, it's not what you think," he said, his voice rough. "Laura, she abandoned us long ago." But Laura scoffed, her tone triumphant. "Abandoned? You make it sound so simple, Ethan. You hid me from her because you knew I'd expose the truth." Emma stood, her hands trembling. "What truth?" she demanded, her voice choked. Laura tilted her head, her smile cold. "That he's not the hero you think he is. He's a single-dad millionaire with a dark past, and you're just a distraction." Emma's chest tightened. She looked at Ethan, waiting for him to fight back. But he only said, his voice heavy with regret, "Laura, enough." Those words couldn't calm the storm raging in Emma's heart. She turned to Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "You hid this from me? After everything we've been through?" Ethan reached out, as if to hold her back. "Emma, I didn't want to hurt you. Laura is no longer part of our lives." But Laura interrupted, her voice sharp. "Really, Ethan? Then why didn't you tell her I was everything to you?" Emma shook her head, unable to bear more. "I can't trust you," she said, her voice breaking. She fled the cafe, the freezing rain soaking her skin, leaving Ethan and Laura behind. New York's streets felt like a nightmare, the relentless rain blurring her vision. Emma ran, tears mixing with the rain. She thought of Mia, the innocent girl with the radiant smile, and of Ethan, the man she'd begun to love. Laura was Mia's mother, and Ethan had said nothing. She felt betrayed, as if every moment with him was a charade. As a millionaire dad, he could easily hide the truth, couldn't he? She wondered why Laura had returned, what she wanted, and if Ethan was truly the man she thought he was. She wandered aimlessly, her clothes drenched, her body trembling. Suddenly, dizziness hit, her vision fading. The streets tilted, and before she knew it, she collapsed, the cold rain enveloping her. The world sank into darkness, and she didn't know if she'd wake to face the truth. When Emma opened her eyes, she was in a hospital bed, soft white light making her blink. Machines beeped steadily, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air. She felt weak, her head heavy, but then she noticed Ethan beside her. He sat with his head bowed, his hair disheveled, his eyes tired, but fixed on her. As a single-dad millionaire, he always maintained a polished exterior, but now he looked like a man battling the fear of losing someone he loved. "Emma," he whispered as she stirred, his voice raw. "You scared me to death." Emma turned away, unwilling to meet his gaze. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice frail but sharp. Ethan leaned closer, his eyes filled with pain. "Because I care about you, Emma. Because I can't let you go." She let out a bitter laugh, the sound laced with hurt. "Care? After you hid Laura from me?" Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Laura left me and Mia when she was just a baby. She chose money, luxury, and left me with a child. I didn't tell you because I didn't want that past to hurt you." His words shook her, but the pain lingered, sharp as a blade. She thought of Laura, her haughty gaze, and of Mia, the innocent child caught in the crossfire of truth. "I don't know how to trust you anymore," she whispered, tears spilling down. Ethan reached out, hesitating, as if afraid she'd push him away. "I know I don't deserve your trust right now," he said, his voice earnest, "but I swear I'll do anything to prove myself." Emma looked at him, her heart torn between love and fear. She wanted to believe him, to take his hand, but the shadow of doubt loomed large. She closed her eyes, exhausted, and when she opened them, Ethan was still there, his gaze unwavering. She heard his soft footsteps as he left the room, and a question hung in the air. Could she love a man carrying so many secrets? The soft white light of the hospital enveloped Emma Larson as she woke, her body frail, but her mind slowly sharpening. She lay in bed, the steady beeps of machines a reminder that she'd survived the emotional storm of the previous night. Rain, Laura, the painful truth about Ethan Caldwell, a single dad millionaire, the man she'd opened her heart to but now doubted. She turned her head and saw Ethan still beside her, his eyes weary yet fixed on her. As a millionaire dad, he'd never seemed more vulnerable, as if the weight of the world pressed down on his shoulders. "Are you okay, Emma?" he asked, his voice hoarse with worry. She didn't answer, only stared at him, her heart torn between love and suspicion. She recalled the moment she faced Laura, Mia's mother, the haughty woman who claimed Ethan had hidden her from Emma. Laura's words had cut like a knife, slicing through Emma's fragile trust. Ethan had explained that Laura abandoned him and Mia, but was that truth enough to dispel the dark cloud of doubt in her heart? She closed her eyes, trying to piece together the chaotic fragments. Paul Grayson, the reporter, his accusations of financial scandals, and the pained look in Ethan's eyes whenever his past came up. She knew she needed answers, not just for her heart, but for Mia, the innocent girl who'd become an essential part of her life. After leaving the hospital, Emma returned to her small apartment, but her mind found no peace. She opened her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard, searching for every scrap of information about Ethan Caldwell. As a single dad millionaire, he was the subject of numerous articles, most praising his success and generosity. But one old article, buried in archived pages, stopped her cold. The headline read, "Young doctor faces financial allegations, relationship shattered." It mentioned a woman named Laura Bennett, once Ethan's fiancée, and suspicions that she exploited him for personal gain. Emma's heart raced. Laura. The woman in the penthouse photo. Mia's mother. She read on, each line a puzzle piece falling into place. Laura had left Ethan after he refused to indulge her lavish demands. She vanished, leaving him with Mia, a newborn, and whispers of a financial scandal. But there was no concrete evidence, and the story faded into obscurity. Emma frowned, her fingers tightening. If this was true, why had Laura returned? And why was she trying to convince Emma that Ethan was a liar? She resolved to confront Laura. Through a contact of Lily's, Emma obtained the address of a high-end Manhattan apartment where Laura was staying. She stood before the building, her heart pounding, but determination overcame her fear. When Laura opened the door, her eyes flashed with surprise before settling into a smug smile. "Emma, isn't it? I figured you'd show up," Laura said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Emma didn't mince words. "Why did you lie about Ethan? Why are you back?" Laura shrugged, gliding into her opulent living room, gesturing for Emma to sit. "I didn't lie," she said coolly. "Ethan's a single dad millionaire, but he's not the hero you think. He hid me from you because he knew I'd expose the truth." Emma clenched her fists, striving to stay calm. "What truth? That you abandoned Mia? That you only wanted his money?" Laura laughed, but the sound couldn't mask the tension in her eyes. "You're so naive, Emma. Ethan doesn't love you. You're just a distraction, a way for him to forget me." Her words stung like a blade, but Emma stood her ground. She locked eyes with Laura, her voice steady. "If you're telling the truth, why didn't you stay for Mia? Why did you abandon your daughter?" Laura froze, her gaze faltering. In that moment, Emma saw the truth flicker in her eyes, a truth Laura couldn't hide. She hadn't returned for Mia, nor for love of Ethan. She was back for greed, for the allure of a millionaire dad she'd once discarded. Emma stood, her heart pounding. "You're wrong, Laura. Ethan doesn't need you, and neither do I. She left the apartment, her mind reeling but clearer than ever. She knew she had to face Ethan, to put an end to her doubts. She drove to his penthouse, the rain having stopped, leaving shimmering puddles on New York's streets. When she stepped inside, Ethan was in the living room, his eyes tired but brightening at the sight of her. "Emma," he said, his voice rough. "I thought you'd never come back." She took a deep breath, her gaze locked on his. "I know about Laura," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I know she abandoned you and Mia. But I need to hear it from you, Ethan. The truth." Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with pain but sincere. He stepped closer, his voice low and raw. "Laura was my biggest mistake. I loved her, or thought I did, but she only wanted money, the lavish life I was building. When Mia was born, she couldn't handle the responsibility. She left, abandoning me and our daughter." Emma's chest tightened. She thought of Mia, the girl with the radiant smile, and of Ethan, who'd carried the burden alone. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, tears streaming down. Ethan sighed, his eyes heavy with regret. "Because I was afraid, Emma. Afraid you'd see me as a failure. Afraid I'd lose you, like I lost Laura." His words crashed over her like a wave, washing away the last traces of doubt in her heart. She stepped forward, taking his hand, feeling the warmth of his fingers. "You're not a failure, Ethan," she whispered. "You're a single dad millionaire who did everything for Mia. And for me." Ethan looked at her, his eyes glistening, and in that moment, they both knew they could no longer run from each other. But just as Emma thought the truth was clear, another revelation erupted. A call from Lily came, her friend's voice urgent. "Emma, I just heard from a source. Laura hired Paul Grayson, that reporter, to spread rumors about Ethan. She wanted to ruin him, to claim a share of his wealth she thinks she deserves." Emma gasped, turning to Ethan. He stood there, his eyes darkening but unsurprised. "I suspected as much," he said, his voice low. "Laura always knew how to manipulate, but I didn't think she'd go this far." The truth hit like a blow, but it was also a light piercing the darkness. Laura hadn't just abandoned Ethan and Mia, she'd tried to destroy their lives out of greed. Emma felt anger, but more than that, a newfound strength. She gripped Ethan's hand, her eyes unwavering. "She can't win," she said. Ethan smiled, for the first time in days, a smile brimming with hope. "No, she can't. Because I have you, Emma." She fell into his arms, tears falling, but her heart unburdened. They held each other in the vast penthouse, as if the world had shrunk to just the two of them. Mia ran in, wrapping her arms around them both, and in that moment, Emma knew she'd found her family. As a millionaire dad, Ethan could have had anything, but he chose her, and she chose him. A year later, Emma and Ethan stood in the small cafe where it all began. The gentle glow of hanging lights bathed them, a reminder of the early days filled with doubt and hope. Mia sat nearby, drawing, her smile as bright as the sun. Ethan held Emma's hand, his thumb tracing slow circles on her skin. He knelt, a small velvet box in his hand, his eyes shimmering with love. "Emma Larson," he said, his voice steady yet tender. "Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Emma's vision, but she nodded, her voice choked. "Yes." The cafe erupted in applause, but all Emma heard was Ethan's heartbeat, blending with her own. They'd walked through darkness, through secrets and pain, to find each other. As a single dad millionaire, Ethan once thought love was impossible, but Emma proved him wrong. Their story is proof that love doesn't require perfection, but choice, trust, and the courage to face the truth. Share this story with friends in America, to spread the message that no matter how deep the secrets, True love always finds the light. And as Emma and Ethan stepped out of the cafe, hand in hand, they knew the future ahead would be a new journey, filled with hope and love